Hey everybody! I am at my sister's house tonight, and I'm sorry I'm a few minutes late, but I had to get these little cheaters for the story, so that way I could tell you guys about this really cool story. And the story tonight is about a guy who didn't have any friends. No friends at all. Oh, isn't that sad? Hey Tanya, how are you? Thanks for jumping on. I appreciate it. So this is about a guy, and actually the title of the story says, The Man Who Didn't Have Any Friends. None. That's what it says. The man who didn't have any friends. None. Hey, Paula Parrish. Thank you for jumping on. How are the kiddos? How are you guys? Everybody having a good day? We had like a little bit of a rain downpour. I don't know who ordered the monsoon, but daggone, it was a lot of rain. Hey, Cindy Moravik. So good to have you on. I'm assuming. Hey, Cheryl. Thanks for jumping on. Look at all the support tonight. How awesome is that? Thank you very, very, very much. So I want to point something out, and I don't know if you guys have thought about this. This week we have been talking about dads in the Bible. We talked about one of the dads was Jesse, and we talked about another one of the dads who was Samson's dad. But I want to point something out to us that, good, I'm glad you're doing good, Paula. Thanks for answering. I'm thinking that, did we ever stop to think that we have a dad? We as moms or as sisters or brothers or cousins or uncles, or everybody has a dad somewhere. So one thing I want to point out is, if that dad is not a part of your life, who is the person that is the role model in your life? Is it a teacher? Is it a preacher? Is it an aunt or an uncle? Or is it a neighbor? Is it a baseball coach? Who is the person that you look up to as a male role model? And I thought it was kind of cool to start thinking about and I know kids are going to be kind of surprised at this, but we as moms, yeah, we're old, don't get me wrong, we have a dad. That is your grandma or grandpa. It would be grandpa. If it's a dad, it would be your grandpa or papaw or peepaw or whatever you call them. But we as parents have parents. And when you get little kiddos that are young, they are blown away, especially if they're talking to their nana or their grandma, and they'll say, well, that's my sister. You mean my great aunt is your sister? Yeah. They forget that we were little too, and we grew up too. So how's that for a little brain stumper for the evening? Thinking, did you know that we had parents too? And I don't know what your relationship is like with your parents, but I want you to know that God is our Heavenly Father. And we will talk about that a little later on in the week. But don't be discouraged, and don't feel distraught or bitterness or upset with what's going on today, because guess what? In like 4.5 hours, today's going to be done, and it's a brand new day. And you control your mindset. So how you feel about something is your thought process. So how do you start a really positive thought process? Is with prayer, and the power of positive thinking. So with that being said, enough mambo jambo, right? Let's get on with the story. It's probably what you're thinking. The story tonight says, the man who didn't have any friends. None. Now, isn't that sad? Do you know anybody that doesn't have any friends at all? And if you do, then you need to reach out and be a friend to them, because it's very important that we are a good friend to people. Here we go. Hi, Debbie. Thanks for jumping on. So there was once a man who didn't have any friends. None. None at all. Do you have any friends? Have you ever felt like, I don't have any friends? But then you go to the park and there's so-and-so and they're like, hey, you want to play with us? Well, yeah. Wait a minute. Is that a friend? Or have you ever gone to school? Who do you eat lunch with? Or have you ever gone to Walmart and you've seen somebody in your class and they're like, hey, hi. So when you think about who is your friend, who is the person that you really like, I wish they could come over and play Xbox with me, or I wish we could go outside and play basketball, or I wish there was somebody that I could just talk to, and you like text them or Snapchat or whatever you do. Who is that person? That is your friend. Think about that. And if you don't have any friends, think about how you could be a friend to somebody because maybe they don't have any friends either. Ha! Riddle me that, right? So this man, he said, I don't have any friends. Well, do you have any friends? Of course you do. You just may not consider them a friend. But you do have friends. But not Zacchaeus. Poor Zacchaeus didn't have any. You're probably wondering why. Well, was it because he was so short? Because Zacchaeus was short. This is not a reason to not like someone, just so you know. Was it because he had a name that was hard to say? Well, that's not a good reason not to like someone either. Even though he was short, and he did have a funny name. I mean, Zacchaeus. We learned how to write our names in like preschool or kindergarten. Can you imagine trying to learn to spell the name Zacchaeus? That would be a hard one, wouldn't it? Zacchaeus. It is spelled Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus. That's a long name. Even though he was short and he did have a funny name, no people didn't like Zacchaeus because he stole their money. That's why. Zacchaeus collected taxes. And taxes were what people had to pay the king. And guess what? We still have to pay taxes still in this very day that we live in. But Zacchaeus took more than he was supposed to. And he kept the extra money for himself and made himself rich. Now, what do you think about that? What if I would say, let's just pretend like you're going to McDonald's. And I don't know if you can go in your McDonald's yet. So maybe you're driving through. And I said, you're going to order a McChicken. So that would be $4. That's kind of expensive, isn't a McChicken just like $1? Well, it's $4 today. So I pay McDonald's $1 and I keep $3. Is that fair? No, it's not right, is it? Well, that's kind of what Zacchaeus was doing. He was telling people that what they had to pay the king, he was taking more money and he was keeping it for himself. Everyone knew what he was up to. So he wasn't being very secretive or being very lucrative. He was just taking it and didn't really have much conscience about it. So everybody knew, and that made them kind of cross and grumpy. So if somebody does you wrong, does it maybe kind of affect the way you feel that day? If somebody says, hey, the McChicken was $4, and you go home and you're like, man, they just took $3 out of my pocket. What's going on? And it kind of changes your outlook and your attitude, doesn't it? Well, they didn't like Zacchaeus, not one little bit. They did not like him because they knew he was not being honest with their money and he was being kind of like a thief, wasn't he? So they made sure he knew it. And here's what they did. They avoided him. That's one thing they did. And they would walk on the opposite side of the street. Oh, that's not very nice. And they would pretend not to see him. So I'd be like, hey, Debbie Wheeler Mock, how you doing? And she'd be like, I don't see you. Can't hear you. So that's the kind of stuff that they were doing. They were whispering things about him like, there's that nobody who thinks he's a somebody. And they would say it loud enough that they could hear, or that he could hear it. So have you ever been in school and say, here he comes, look what he's wearing, or look what she's wearing, look at her hair. And then you say it kind of loud so they can hear it. Has anybody ever done that to you? It doesn't make you feel very good, does it? So I'm going to show you a really quick picture. Here's the village where Zacchaeus was, and there's the people on the other side of the street talking about him, saying mean things on the other side of the street. Don't even want to be around him. So anyway, let's move forward. One day, a huge crowd gathered by the road. Jesus was coming to their town, and everyone wanted to see him. So Zacchaeus, he even wanted to see Jesus too, but everyone was a little bit too tall. Remember we talked about Zacchaeus being kind of short? So he tried jumping up and down, but that didn't work. He really couldn't see anything. So luckily, Zacchaeus had a good idea. I'll climb that sycamore tree, he said. So he did! And he was surprisingly good at climbing trees for a man who was so unusually short that he had to take a flying leap just to get into his chair in the morning. Now, that's a little petite, is it not? If he has to run and take a leap to get into the chair. So he was actually surprisingly pretty good at climbing trees. Now, here's a picture of Zacchaeus standing behind the men. See how he can't see at all? All he can see is like between their shoulder blades, according to this picture. So from the tree, now remember he's climbed this tree. So from the tree, Zacchaeus had the perfect view. He had the perfect view. All the way down the road, another minute, and suddenly Jesus was at the tree. He stopped and looked up. Zacchaeus saw Jesus, and Jesus saw Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus, Jesus said, I'd like to come over to your house. What do you think Zacchaeus said? Okay, wait a minute. First of all, this guy is very petite. He's having a hard time seeing through the crowd. So he's jumping up and down, and he's trying to see. Well then, much to our surprise, he's quite the tree climber. So he climbs the tree, and he gets up there, and do you think he's thinking, well, Jesus is going to look up and see me? Or do you think he's like, hey, I'm just going to kind of enjoy, kind of like a parade. I want to kind of enjoy the floats and the horses and the police cars and the fire trucks and all the people. I'm going to sit here where I can see it really big and tall. Does anybody really stop and say, hey, how you doing up there in the tree? Do you think he thought Jesus was going to see him? This is pretty miraculous, actually. So then he sees him, and what else does he do? He says, hey, I want to come to your house. I hope it was clean, right? Did we clean house? Woo! So here we go. He said, I'd like to come over to your house. Zacchaeus almost fell out of the tree. That's right, Debbie. He almost fell out of the tree. Come over to his house. No one ever wanted to come anywhere near his house, let alone inside it. So you remember, the people didn't like him. They were making mean comments about him. Like he would be walking down the street, they'd be on the other side of the street. And this Jesus, this man who is known as Jesus, the only perfect one, says, I want to come to your house. Wow. So here's a picture of Zacchaeus in the tree and Jesus standing down there. From the tree, Zacchaeus had the perfect view, remember? So here's Jesus saying, I want to come to your house and hang out. Okay, so the people saw this, and needless to say, it made them even crosser and grumpier than usual. It's kind of like, wait a minute, how come you're giving him attention? They were getting a little jealous, weren't they? They mumbled and murmured and muttered, why is Jesus being kind to that big sinner? Doesn't Jesus know about him? Taking our money and keeping it. And here he is, that old guy, just nobody likes him anyway. Well, Zacchaeus scrambled down, and he took Jesus to his house. He was in a big hurry because he didn't want Jesus to change his mind. Perhaps Jesus hadn't heard about him. Now, this is what Zacchaeus is thinking. And perhaps Jesus didn't know that he had been stealing, and how nobody liked him, and how he didn't have any friends. But Jesus knew it. He actually knew all about Zacchaeus and the stealing and everything. And he still loved him. Zacchaeus was ashamed. Lord, he said, turning pale, what I've done is wrong. But now I want to do the right thing. I will give the money back to everyone, 4 times what I stole. And that's just what he did. So remember the McChicken example. So it was $1 and they charged us $4. So he kept $3. So 4 times means he's going to give people back $12. All the people that he overcharged for the McChicken, he's going to give you $12. Now, that does not mean you get to run to McDonald's and get a free McChicken. That just means it's a nice example of what Zacchaeus is saying. He felt so bad about what he did, he wanted to correct his wrong. He wanted to make it right. So Jesus smiled. My friend. How long do you think Zacchaeus wanted to hear those words? How long do you think Zacchaeus wanted to hear somebody say, my friend? Jesus said it. He smiled and he said, my friend. Today, God has rescued you. Jesus loved Zacchaeus when nobody else did. He was Zacchaeus' friend, even when no one else was, because Jesus was showing people what God's love was like. His wonderful, never stopping, never giving up, unbreaking, always and forever love. That's Jesus' love. So here's a picture of Zacchaeus. Now, I'm sorry, he's stayed in on his stool talking to Jesus. But how long do you think Zacchaeus wanted to hear somebody say, hey, I'd like to be your friend? Even though people act like they don't care if I have any friends or not, or I don't care what people say about me, when somebody says they don't care, they probably do care. Actually, it probably hurts them a lot. So if you see somebody that's hurting, what we're supposed to do is love them anyway. If you see somebody being angry or upset, maybe they're not doing the right thing, we have to love them anyway, because Jesus has commanded us to follow in his footsteps. But that being said, I want you tomorrow or over the weekend to be a friend to somebody. If you might need to Snapchat or say, hey, I was thinking about you, I want you to know that you matter to me. I hope you're having a great day. I appreciate what you do. Thanks for letting me borrow the Xbox game, or whatever it is. Make sure that people know you are the friend, because you have to be the friend that you want to be. To get a friend, you have to be a friend. That's right, Debbie. That's exactly right. So good morning. So I want everybody to know that is the end of our story. But I appreciate so much you being with us tonight and sharing just a little bit of your evening with me. I know that you have a busy day, but you chose to take time to be on here tonight to hear about Zacchaeus. That's pretty awesome. Thank you for your support. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and Twitter. If you have any questions, you can email us at info@theboldmovement.com, or you can put your question right here on the comment side. We would love to hear from you. We appreciate what you're doing and your support, but I challenge you to go out, be kind, be a friend, be faithful, but above all, be bold. Don't be afraid to show someone love, because that is what it's about. I want you guys, what is time your start? We start at 7:30. I want you guys to know I appreciate everything you're doing. Go out and be bold, be blessed, and be a friend. See you tomorrow night at 7:30. Bye, guys.